Hi guys, welcome back. We are a couple medics. I'm Aleem.
And my name's Andrea. And today we're going to talk about our journeys to becoming doctors.
You should stay tuned if one, you're interested in becoming a doctor. Two, if you're not too sure what route to take, such as the graduate route, the undergraduate route, and we will be giving you some insights into the routes we took. Okay, so why don't we start with you, seeing as you took the conventional route into medicine?
So that's code for the run-of-the-mill, boring route, but I knew that I wanted to be a doctor from about 6 years old. I remember my mum brought home this little first aid book thing with different first aid techniques, and I was just reading it, just flipping through it as a child, and just from there, that's my earliest memory of wanting to become a doctor. So yeah, conventional in that I've known for a long time that I wanted to be a doctor, and conventional in the sense that I did take the undergrad route as well.
You knew since a baby you wanted to be a doctor?
Right out of the womb, I knew.
Okay.
As soon as I came out.
Okay. There was nothing else you considered?
Well, I probably considered them quite briefly. And something that I would say is everyone should consider all of their options. So in terms of myself, I've always been a big fan of learning languages and linguistics. And so that was something that I did think about pursuing as well in higher education or tutoring others. But I think my heart still did lie with medicine.
It's one of the passion.
Well, as the young and naive teenager that I was, yes, I was very passionate.
So young and naive, maybe too young to make a decision to become a doctor.
A lot of people would say that actually. Obviously in the UK, the conventional route is undergraduate. So you're 17, not even 18 a lot of the time, applying for a course that's going to change the rest of your life, as opposed to other countries, like in the United States, where medicine is a postgraduate degree and you've had the benefit of some life experiences.
Okay, so you knew quite early you wanted to study medicine. At what point did you need to start putting steps in place to make sure you materialised your dream?
Well, I think from early on, I knew that, academic success and applying myself in terms of my work was really important. But in terms of actually making very specific steps towards applying for medicine, I'd say it's when I was applying for GCSE. So about year 9. So making sure I had the right mix of subjects that I knew medical schools were looking for. So the right science subjects, maths of course, my languages as an added interest, and just making sure my studies were tailored towards that. And with A-level, it all brought it home even more. That's when you apply for university through the UCAS process.
How about work experience?
Work experience.
Did you do secondary school work experience in a hospital?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to know somebody that worked in the hospital that was near me. So, I just did your run-of-the-mill work experience as a secondary school student. So I was at the medical reception and I did learn a few things from the doctors that were there. But, you have to be able to talk to people. And back then I had varied interests in terms of my specialities, including dermatology. So I stuck around with a few of the dermatologists. So that was really good. And just being in the hospital environment and demystifying it and making it more familiar to me was important. Next was the actual application process. So looking at the requirements for all the different unis in terms of entrance exams, GCSE grades, A-level grades as well, based on your predicted grades obviously at that time as well. And location, the kind of uni that I wanted to go to, because different unis teach medicine in different ways. Some are more maybe traditionally lecture based and seminar based, and others use maybe more newer techniques and more varied techniques like case-based discussions in groups. So that was really important.
What was the checklist you needed before, let's say, sending off your application?
Personally, well, the types of things that medical schools look for, aside from good grades, is having sufficient work experience, having evidence of being a well-rounded person. So ideally, you don't want a doctor that's just completely devoted to one thing and maybe doesn't have any other skills outside of that. So making sure that you show your extracurriculars. One thing that we used to do a lot was Duke of Edinburgh, which in and of itself involved a lot of activities like expeditions, charity work, creative skills. So that was a really good way of showing that you are more well-rounded.
Okay.
Also, just making sure that I developed my interview skills. So we would work in groups and have sample questions or questionnaires.
Okay. And how many universities did you apply for?
So I applied for 5 universities. So with medicine, I don't know if it's still the case, but you've got 5 slots on UCAS, but only 4 of them can be for medicine. So the last one, usually people apply for something that's related to medicine, like biomedical science. I applied for 4 medical schools and 1 biomedicine course.
And biomed was to be a backup just in case. It's typical.
Yeah.
That's typical.
It was, and the course that I applied to was such that if you had good enough grades, then you had a better chance of actually entering their medical school. So it was a bit of forethought with that as well.
Okay, did you have to sit any exams?
I did. So there are 2 main entrance exams. One is the UKCAT, which is actually the more common one, and the other is the BMAT, which is used in a few universities. So I did sit both because I had both types of universities on my list. And yeah, that was another hoop to jump through essentially. So having to having to study that, and those exams are very different. They say that actually you don't really need to prepare for it, which is another thing that I don't believe. So taking the UKCAT and the BMAT were, those experiences were fine. I do remember getting quite nervous in the BMAT actually, to the point where I had a huge coughing fit and had to leave the exam hall for a little while. All of my interviews were panel interviews. One of them did have some mini stations. So, walking around or speaking to different people about some hypothetical scenarios. So there was a combination of ethical scenarios as well as more scientific scenarios. Not clinical yet, because of course we haven't done any clinical studies, but pure basic sciences and basic sciences and knowledge of your stuff.
Have you read The New Scientist?
Everyone read The New Scientist.
Student BMJ.
Student BMJ, New Scientist. You had all of that on your application, and sometimes they would ask you about what you read. So I remember in one of my interviews, one thing that I'd mentioned was, at the time anyways, the celebrity trend to have C-section. We did talk about that, pros and cons, risks, benefits, and social trends.
So you had your interviews. Did you do any preparation for interviews? Any courses?
I didn't do any courses. I probably had a couple of books and some willing friends.
Okay.
Fine. So how many offers did I get for medicine? I got 3 offers for medicine, and I got my biomed offer.
So now we can maybe touch on the unconventional route, which is not as unconventional as you would think.
Certainly not anymore.
Let's say an alternative route. I didn't know I wanted to be a medical doctor. I initially wanted to do forensic science. So when I was in 6th form, I actually applied for biology, chemistry, philosophy, English. I really didn't know what I was doing. So I just thought, let me get some strong sciences. Let me get some artsy subjects as well. And then, because I was addicted to CSI, I decided to apply for forensic science. Well, I considered applying for forensic science. I went to some open days and asked a lot of questions, and soon realised that forensic science probably wasn't going to be a career for me, because it was nowhere as interesting as it appeared on TV. The closest thing you probably have to a crime scene investigator in the UK is probably a scene of crime officer. They're the ones who really go out and collect all the evidence. Anyway, I soon realised forensic science wasn't for me, and I thought, okay, well, I still need, to do a degree that's going to make use of my A-levels. So I thought biology, chemistry, I enjoy those, biochemistry, So I studied biochemistry as my initial degree. Whilst I was studying biochemistry, I had lots of colleagues who were studying either biochemistry or biomedical science, and a lot of them had a keen interest in studying medicine afterwards. And some of them, biochemistry or biomed was actually their backup. Fast forward, I finished my biochemistry degree, and I'm still not sure what I want to do, but I know I want it to be something that adds value to society. So I always wanted to do something that would add value to the quality of people's lives. And I considered teaching, I considered medicine, I considered even joining the army. And for some reason, I decided to, just go with medicine. Now I was at that point where you would have been when you were in year 10, I guess.
Yeah.
Now,
In a sense.
trying to put those steps in place to, get an idea of medicine is something that's for you, really. So I did the work experience in a hospice and I found it rewarding. I shadowed GPs, I shadowed doctors in hospitals, pediatricians, neurosurgeons, and then I thought, you know what, why not get a full-time job working as a support worker in mental health? So that's what I done. And it was really a challenging job, but very rewarding and very interesting. No day was the same. Then I had to look at the medical schools and essentially decide which medical schools to apply to. And I could either apply for undergraduate universities, would have been a lot more expensive because you don't get as much funding, or I could apply for the graduate route, which is 4 years as opposed to 5 or 6. The universities I applied for needed some required entrance exams, some didn't. And essentially with graduate entry medicine, there's a third entrance exam, and that's the GAMSET. So there is the UK CAP for a number of the universities, there is the BMAT for a couple, and the GAMSET, which I believe was a 6-hour exam. It's quite expensive. So that alone put so many people off.
Do you remember how much it was around about?
I think around £200, maybe more.
And at that time, when you're a student, you don't necessarily have money like that.
Yeah. So that in itself is a huge deterrent for people. So I sat the UK CAT and the GAMSAT. GAMSAT is a mix of verbal reasoning, physics, maths, biology, chemistry, essay writing. And I thought, you know what, I've done biology, chemistry, philosophy, English literature. I shouldn't have much of a difficulty doing this. So I didn't get an interview from any of the UK CAT universities, but I got an interview from both the GAMSAT universities. And the interview was in a MMI format, which is multiple mini interviews, which again ask you varying questions, which could be a bit of role play, ethical dilemmas, asking you about your experience. I got one offer.
So just before you got your offer, how did you balance the demands of making sure that your application was well-rounded, getting the work experience, starting to work in mental health? How did you find the time or even the motivation?
I think it's essentially just having to do what needs to be done. And it makes you, so many people set off on that goal to go into a career that demands a lot of you just to get in the first place. Whether that could be medicine, whether it could be law, banking, consultancy, etc. And whether you're able to do it or not is, in a sense, part of the selection. So because I had the drive, the hunger, I was a graduate earning below the average, and working in mental health and psychiatry. I was doing shift work for the first time, so it was very challenging maintaining work-life balance when you're not really too sure what you're doing the next week. because as junior doctors we do shift work, but we can get our rota for maybe 4 months per rotation, whereas I was essentially having my rota every couple of weeks. So if you go to the gym, you know, you could be on nights the next week and not know. You could be doing the weekends, you could be doing long days, and at the same time you've got this exam that you've invested so much into that you also need to make sure you're preparing for. And you know, if you've got the drive, the desire, the hunger, you can do it, but you just need to bear in mind that each step of the way is part of the selection.
Well, my summary is, got that little first aid book when I was 6, and the rest was history. But of course there was a lot of preparation and hard work along the way. Getting my GCSE grades, getting my A-level grades, applying for university, getting through uni, which is another video that we can do.
Yeah.
And finally qualifying. So the moment that you walk across the stage and you get called doctor for the first time.
I didn't walk across the stage.
Well, for me,
one graduation
it was all worth it.
One graduation was enough for me.
I graduated by BSc as well.
That's true.
But yeah, no, you know, whether you do walk across the stage or whether it's the diploma that gets posted to you, that day where you can finally put doctor in front of your name is a special day. It's a special day. Thank you guys for watching. We hope you got some great insights into 1, our journey into medicine.
Yeah.
And 2, the different kind of journeys that are open to you to take
exactly.
into medicine.
And if you've got any questions at all, then just leave them in the comments.